where would that be?
Well, good afternoon, folks. Joe and Steve Gilgee are in Rugby, North Dakota at the home of Kenneth Tastad. Kenneth Tastad is
but we're not
97 years old. Is that right, Kenneth? You're 97? And Kenneth is,
darn it.
Kenneth is the only surviving son of the pioneers that came to Rolette area in the late 1800s and early 1900s. And we have visited with Kenneth many times.
This close to talking to him.
Yeah, I see that.
Kenneth has been, we've been to visit Kenneth.
You can see him talking away there.
And had a very delightful time with
Is that the audio on the side there? That you...
Yeah.
So Kenneth, how are you doing today? How are you feeling?
I don't think they can hear us.
What did you do? Pull the back off? That's been done before.
I'm puzzled to get it back on. You got to put it all on at the same time, huh?
The glue has dried up, and
Joe and Steve, maybe you can repeat the question.
It needs some work, I guess.
I can't figure it out how to get it.
Did you hear the question, Steve? Ken? Can Joe and can you repeat the question?
We don't have any speakers on here, maybe.
How are you feeling today, Kenneth?
Sense?
Should.
I don't think
The
they're hearing
volume's
us.
up so
Serious louder.
Put his headphones in there. See if that works.
Oh, I'm gonna get Joe on the phone.
We have a plug-in for that. Hello.
Hi, Joe. Can you repeat the questions for Kenneth, if that would help him?
We can't get any audio at all.
No volume.
Pardon?
We can't get any audio at all.
You can't
We
hear
can't hear anything you're saying.
Oh, they can't hear us.
Yeah, they can't hear us, but we can hear them.
Yeah.
Well,
Use the phone.
Oh, there you go.
yeah, just use the phone.
No, you used it.
I don't.
That was no good.
Just turn your speaker on.
Yeah, we can.
We can hear you very clearly, Joellen. That's
Yeah. Can you hear us with our confused look on our face, trying to figure out what's going on?
Let me try something here.
Let's try this one.
Ask Joe what kind of computer she's using.
What Joe?
I got a Dell.
She's got a Dell. Can you can hear me now, Joe?
Yeah, I can hear you on the
Okay.
phone. But
Okay. Well, here let's try this. Let me ask you the question here and have see if Kenneth can respond. Kenneth,
yeah, but they can hear. Do you think it works?
Okay, Kenneth, how are you feeling today?
Oh, okay. So what's going on is that he's got some headphones.
Yes.
And so Kenneth is going to listen on the headphones.
Okay. 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 So Kenneth, how are you feeling today, Kenneth? How are you feeling today, Kenneth?
Are you talking to him?
Yeah, I just asked him how he's feeling today.
Yeah, I heard you.
Okay. Now,
Try talking to him again.
Okay, Kenneth, can you hear me okay?
He can't hear you. I'm gonna hang up, okay?
Okay. Kenneth, can you hear me okay? Can we hear Kenneth? Okay, can each of you unmute yourself? Okay.
But
Can you unmute yourself? Try that, each of you.
I hear your voice, but I couldn't quite make out what you said.
Okay, is that Kenneth?
Yes.
Okay, Kenneth, let's try this. Kenneth, can you share with us a little bit about your memory of your mother and father? What do you remember about them?
Oh, I guess I remember quite a bit, maybe, but what time particularly? Back in the olden days? Or?
Yeah, right.
Well, the one time I remember most is I went to Christmas Eve services at Valley Lutheran Church on Christmas Day or Christmas Eve, I guess. And we went with the horses and sleigh. We had a bobsleigh with a wagon box that we had moved on to it because we used the wagon. They used the wagon box to haul coal in for the winter, and then he had fixed this up with some hay in the bottom, and so we had a nice place to lay or sit.
Okay.
And,
You remember?
and,
do you remember how your mother and father met?
pardon?
You remember how your mother and father met each other? Where they met? How did they happen to get married?
What about my father's? I can't quite get that.
Do you remember how your mother and father met each other?
Oh, well, evidently, Dad came from Norway and was in the valley. And I guess Dad used to work in a store down there when he was down there in the valley at Caledonia or whatever it was.
Okay, all right.
And I suppose that's how they met. Maybe through Mother's brother mainly that they got acquainted because Dad was such a good friend of her brothers.
Okay.
Because I remember that because that's where Dad had gone down to the valley to visit Uncle Olaus, I think, the weekend that Mother passed away.
Oh, okay.
So he wasn't home at the time.
Oh, so when you call about the valley, is that near Caledonia, Minnesota? Is that what the valley is?
Well, that was what it would be. I call it New Caledonia, but it was in there by Neilsville, and Neilsville, Minnesota, of course.
Okay.
Their places wasn't far from Neilsville.
Let's move to something more recent, Kenneth. You were young during the time of the Depression in Rolette, weren't you? You were a young boy.
Yes, I was.
Tell us what you remember about living during the Depression.
Well, mainly we didn't have an awful lot to eat, I would say. Mother used to mix up something, I think you'd call it a porridge. It was milk and and sugar and maybe some other things in it. It was and that's what we used to have to eat, because we didn't have too many things. But
Okay.
and
Do you
I remember quite often, or maybe this one particular time, we did have eggs, and Mother had scrambled a bunch of eggs for supper. But you know, there was quite a few of us that sat around the table, and by the time Mother saw that they were taking too much, and by the time it got to me, I was kind of the last one. I don't know why. Mother was the last one. But anyway, there wasn't too many scrambled eggs left on the plate, and Mother told me I could take them all, and she'd go fix herself a sandwich. I kind of.
By the way, you can all unmute yourselves if you want to. You should be able to unmute yourselves now. So if you want to ask a question, you should be able to unmute yourself. The best way I've been able to figure out. Try that and see. Kenneth, during the Depression, do you remember the heat, how hot it was and how windy it was? Did you have dust in the house at all times?
Well, yes, I know there was dust on the windowsills and living room from the wind blowing, and in the kitchen, I should say, is where the dust was, I guess.
Yeah. Okay, and then Kenneth, in terms of the drought during the 30s, what do you remember about the lack of crops during that time?
Well, not too much, I guess. I do remember there one time sweet clover growed pretty good, and I wished I had the picture now, but so anyway, they had been hauling sweet clover, Harold and Albert and maybe Tilford too, and Irvin, and they had loaded up sweet clover, and then to top it off further, why they had gotten together and loaded it all on one rack, and so there's one rack that's way up above the sides. It's for fun, but I don't know whatever happened to that picture, but they did take a picture of it. So.
Let's see if somebody else wants to ask a question. Chuck, I think you want to ask a question.
Chuck isn't here.
He's on the phone here. Chuck?
Oh, he is.
You'll be able to unmute yourself. No, I've checked it, and everybody can unmute yourself. Can't you? I've done my best. I've clicked unmute everybody, and
I see.
Okay, there, Paul. Maybe you got it now.
okay. What's your question, Chuck?
Oh, just a second. Yeah, Kenneth, just wondering, do you what kind of transportation do you first remember that your family had? What kind of a vehicle, or was it just horse-drawn?
Horse-drawn was the only thing I knew of until 1924 or 25, 26. 26, I think. They didn't get
what kind of a vehicle did you get?
26, the year after I was born.
What kind of a vehicle was it, if you know?
It was a Model T 4-door.
Both Chuck and Ann have unmuted themselves, so it indicates to me that anybody can unmute themselves if they'd like to. Chuck, do you want to ask another question of Ken?
Okay, Kenneth, what church do you remember your family went to back at that time?
It was the Valley Lutheran that I only remember.
Well, eventually the family moved to a different church. Is that right?
Chuck,
Well, they may have. They didn't after they moved to Valley.
Okay.
now they moved to Valley very early, Chuck. They were in Valley very early.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Kenneth, tell us what you remember, Kenneth, about the thrashing crew. Which families cooperated when you had your annual thrashing? Did Andrew have partners that he did with other families? And so what families were they?
Well, it was Nels Martin family and Conroy Nelson.
So
John Nelson family at this time. But there was a thrashing machine that Dad and Conroy Nelson and maybe he used to be and Soini had together at one time. But Soini had that tractor that didn't really have enough power for the thrashing machine, and it was a slow thrashing. And they decided that they had to sell out this rig, and it was a fellow up in the Turtle Mountains that bought the thrashing rig. But before he took it, the deal was that he had to thrash the crops for the guys that owned it, like Nelson's and Soini's and Husaby's. And that was these guys up in the hills. They had a one-cylinder Rumley, I think. Yeah, that's what it was. It was a one-cylinder Rumley that they thrashed with. And they said that engine pulled the thrash machine and thrashed so much nicer than that two-cylinder that they had been trying to use.
When did you get the combine?
When did we get the combine?
Yeah.
Well, it was kind of piece by piece. Selmer got a turtleback combine, John Deere. That was the first combine that I knew of.
Okay.
And but that year we left some bundles that we thrashed, I think.
You don't remember what year that was?
Not for sure, no, I couldn't.
Okay. Kenneth, let me ask you about the telephone. When do you remember when you first got a telephone at your house?
Well, I was kind of wondering about that one day, but it seemed like it was kind of early that a few of the neighbors got a telephone in, but I don't think it was way back in 1919, but that's a year that kind of sets out with me for a telephone, but I think it must have been later than that, but they were getting telephones around there, I think about 1919.
What about indoor plumbing? How long was it before you had a
that went pretty, almost till I left the farm. I think I was the last one on the list to get an indoor toilet that could be used for all of it.
Let's see, Naomi, do you have a question of Kenneth? Can't you unmute yourself? Can you unmute yourself? You should be able to unmute yourself.
Naomi,
yeah, okay. Naomi's on the phone. She can't unmute yourself. Okay, let's.
Well, and back on what Paul was asking about telephones, do you recall that your parents or your older siblings that they rubbernecked? That was common when the phone rang, that they'd pick it up and listen to what was going on with the neighbors.
Oh yes, it was. Sometimes that went on quite a bit. I think we learned quite a bit from the neighbors that way.
that's the way you found out the news in the neighborhood.
Yes, that's true.
Let's continue. Kenneth, what about electric lights? How long was it before you got electricity?
Well, we had electricity probably earlier than anybody around there because we had the 32-volt light plant with batteries that we used.
Well, your dad set that up himself, your own electric plant?
I think Selmer had rigged that up with the.
Okay.
But then in the wiring that was done in the house was done at that time with the idea that it would still be able to be used.
Okay.
When the power come through for us.
Okay, so you were one of the first to have electricity on the farms because of what Selmer.
I think so.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Let me ask you a question that goes back a few years below that. Did your father and mother live in a sod house when they first came to Rolette? Do you know? Before they built the building?
I have my doubts about that because
okay.
I don't know of any other building until this little pump house, 12 by 10 or whatever it is, was built. And so that was their first house.
Okay.
As far as I know, I'm almost certain that that was built before Mother come up.
Okay, so they didn't have the experience of living on that. Let's talk
that little house.
Yeah. Let's talk about hunting and fishing. Were you a hunter and a fisherman?
Well, I was a bit of a hunter, but wild game and stuff and ducks, but that was about all. Okay. And I don't know. It seemed like we all were with that as far as that goes. I remember skunk hunting was kind of interesting. Guilford had found a den out in the middle of Gur Lake. Gur Lake was dry at the time. And they had taken that den and cleaned it out. And then on top of that, the railroad had culverts in it. And they used to, the skunks used to go and den up in those culverts. And they had to be cleaned out. And so they would tie trees together to get it long enough so that they could push the whole nest out the other end of the culvert.
Kenneth, go ahead, keep talking.
That's the way they used to hunt skunks.
Okay. Kenneth, the big time in Rolette was Saturday night. Tell us what you remember about going to town on Saturday night.
Oh yeah, we used to go to town on Saturday nights, and I had a friend by the name of Georgie Keelan that I kind of used to chum around with, and I guess and he was more outgoing than I thought. And he wanted to go to the park and see if we could see any kids on a park bench, and sneak up on them. But that's my story from Saturday night.
They shifted. When did they shift off Saturday night to Friday night? Do you remember when that happened?
Well, that was a more modern day, I think.
Okay.
Yeah, it might have been, but I don't remember too much of that either, I guess.
Back on your mother and father, Kenneth, going way back, did Mom and Dad ever talk to you about why they left Norway?
No, I don't think so, really.
You don't remember asking them questions about that?
No,
Now you have been back to Norway yourself, haven't you?
Yes, I have.
So you saw where your father was born?
Well, I was pretty close to it. I don't know if the place was exactly the same or so. But
Tastad, I think that was where you went. How
I
about
think
your mother? Did you go back to where your mother was born too, or just your father?
yes, I was up the Goal area. That's where mother was.
Oh, up in the Goal.
Well, mother wasn't, because that was mother wasn't born. Mother was born in the U.S. So
oh, she was. Oh, okay.
yes, she was born in the valley.
Oh, in the valley. Okay. Uh-huh. Now, when you talk about the valley, was that the Red River Valley?
That's the Red River Valley. Yeah.
Okay, so she was born in the Red River Valley, not in Minnesota, then in North Dakota. Okay.
Dad worked on some of the ferry that on the river at one time, I think so.
Oh, he
Because
did.
he used to talk about the sack grain and stuff that they put on the.
Did your dad ever talk
riverboat.
about? Did your dad ever talk about why they went to Rolette? How they happened to pick that as a place to live?
That would be. Dad had come up here and found these people around Rolette, I think, and that's the way that come to be, I suppose.
Okay, you don't remember who it was or anything. Okay, okay. Chuck,
I don't think
a question, or Ann, or anybody?
Well, I don't think Uncle Paul was here, and Dad was here alone first.
Okay,
but he was just kind of bumming around to find out places or something, I think, but I don't know.
So Andrew came before Paul then, is that right?
That's what I would say.
Okay.
And then Dad told Paul that there was probably some possibility there. And then Paul had bought 3 horses, I think, and I don't know if it was a sleigh. No, I think must have been a wagon, but it was in the middle of winter that he drove these 3 horses on this wagon all the way from the valley.
Okay. Let's see. Chuck, did you have a question?
Yeah, I can ask him a question. Wondering, Kenneth, if you recall any type of contacts between your family and the Native American population from Belcourt, and did they come down and visit or anything like that you recall?
Well, I remember them coming down with wood for sale, on their wagons. And I do remember Dad buying a load of mountain lumber poles from them. And of course, Dad always came in to the house and insisted that he had to have some lunch for him.
Did you serve the lunch in the house to them?
I don't think so, but I think it was eaten outside.
Okay.
But
so you remember them buying wood from your father bought wood from the natives that came down from.
Yes, he did.
Okay. Do you remember
sometimes they would come with fence posts that they had cut,
Okay.
And well, a lot of these were very, very sized. And one thing that they had to watch out for was they would try to stack the smallest ones on the inside so you didn't realize them. And the big posts were around the outside of the load. So you had to be careful buying a load of posts. But I think he bought a few loads of posts from them at one time. Another.
Chuck, do you want to follow up with more questions on that? You're muted, Chuck. You're muted. You're muted. Kenneth, let me follow up on Chuck's question. Do you remember the first time you went up to the reservation yourself? Do you remember going to Fish Lake for fishing and Sunday parties? I don't think we can hear. All of a sudden, everything is dark. I'll give Joel a call.
What's Naomi saying now?
Okay, now we can hear you. Now I can hear you, Ken. Ken, do you recall going up to Fish Lake for Sunday parties?
Well, I remember going up there some.
Uh-huh.
I know. They had that water slider or whatever you call it. They would.
Oh, is that right?
Slide down on.
Was that at Bill Sheehan's Sandy Beach? Is that where that was?
Yeah, that was Sandy Beach, I think.
Okay, all right.
Where they had that.
Uh-huh. And did you ever have good friends who were from Belcourt?
Really, I served on the jury one time up there on a car case, and I guess I visited with the people from up there a little bit, and the attorney on this car case saw that I was quite friendly with the natives, and thought maybe he could make a little more of it, I guess. But it never amounted to much because the case that I was on really wasn't that a big a deal. Anyway, it was they said he was driving without due care, and he had he had come too fast, and he run into this other guy, and it was found out that that he had never touched the brakes because the brakes were still working good after the accident. So there were other things there that caused him to.
So you served on the jury there, huh?
Yeah.
All right. Is that just one time on the jury?
That was the only time I was there. We had another case. It was this guy had broken into the Fagerland implement and taken the chains that was in the till, I guess, because it wasn't too much money that he had robbed, and yet they made a case out of it, which I didn't know. But
Ken, I need to ask you.
It ended before the case was fully tried. So
I need to ask you about the farm you're on. It is true that Chuck Tastad has got probably the biggest flock of cattle today as anybody. Is that right? That the Tastad farm has really become a major stock raising place.
Well, I don't know. Chuck has built that up.
Okay.
Of course, but
he got it from his father, Harold, your brother Harold.
the home farm was only about 400 acres, you know, so.
Do you remember when you were growing up, did they have a lot of cattle as well as growing crops?
Oh, I think it was, we had just a few cattle, but and the crops, there weren't too much there. Well, there was added on that quarter and an 80, but this was for my time. Mother's, let's see, who was it? Well, it was Dad's.
What about Mother and Dad?
Dad's brother kind of farmed part of the land there, at least the quarter and 80 out to the west that Dad finally ended up buying.
I see. Okay. All right.
I don't know.
Now, Kenneth, you have good memories of 1976, I would think, when we had the big celebration out at the cemetery and put the monument in the cemetery. You remember that?
Oh yes, I remember closing up the
time capsule.
The what do you call it?
Time capsule.
I still didn't catch what that is, but yeah, there were several of us around there that worked on that a little bit, and some were thinking they shouldn't put too much mortar in the bricks so it would be easier to take apart, but there was a guy from Willow City that thought it should be done pretty well. That was Peter, I guess, from Willow City that May's
I think
son.
that's done quite well. Well,
That insisted that the mortar be in there fully, and so we'll find out when you
right. Are you going
break
to
it apart
help?
how tough it's going to be to get at.
Are you going to help open it up in 2026?
Well, I don't know.
I sure hope you and I will be able to stand or sit right next to each other and watch the people opening it in 2026.
Now that would be kind of interesting, but yeah. I don't know if I'll get to do that. But
Kenneth, you are almost 98. Can you tell us what you think it is that makes some people live longer than others? Do you have any thoughts about your own life?
No, I have no idea on that. I don't know why I have come this far.
Okay. You've had good health. You're looking good right now.
Well, I've had plenty of close calls down through life, though, I think. I know, but I wouldn't begin to start to talk about them too much.
You're living in an apartment in Rugby. You have your own apartment.
Yeah.
And you get 3 meals a day from the apartment?
No, I get only 1 meal, but then that's enough. I can make a sandwich for supper.
I see.
And for breakfast, I usually have some cereal or oatmeal. So that's my diet pretty much. And then I take whatever they fix for dinner.
I remember when we visited you, Kenneth, that you have these nice big pictures on the wall of Rolette when it was being founded and Macomber when it was being founded. Are they still hanging on your wall today?
Yes, they're still hanging here.
Okay, that's pretty good. That's pretty good. So this is wonderful that we've had a chance to chat. Chuck, do you have a question or anybody else? Okay, he's waving. I don't know if that means he's got a question or he's probably saying we've had enough. So Kenneth, this has been a great time with you today. Stephen and Joe, do you have a question you'd like to raise with Kenneth? Can they hear? They should be able to. Okay. Well, is it okay, folks, if we say goodbye? It's been a good session. Thank you so much, Ken. Great to be with you. Look forward to seeing you in 3 years, if not sooner. And thanks for having a good time today.
Thanks for coming and
okay,
getting a little, I don't know.
And everybody,
sorry about.
Yeah, and I apologize to everybody else. I can't figure out why I can't unmute everybody. I've already given instructions to unmute everybody, and try that again. Try to see if you can unmute yourself. Can you unmute yourself? No way to do it. I clicked that. Well, I've got Ann. Let's see. Ken is on mute. Ask to unmute. Ask to unmute.
What would you say is your greatest change you've seen in your life?
Yeah. Now we got a question.
Oh, now it's unmuted.
Okay. Naomi, you got a question for Ken?
Well, you were talking about all your close calls, Uncle Kenny, and I distinctly remember you telling us about the one time when you were out in the field and you were alone and you kind of got stuck between the tractor or under the tractor or something.
Well, I was pretty brave about getting stuck out in the field, I think, with the tractor sometimes. We had a tractor that was on steel, and it was pretty easy to hook a log across the steel wheels and thinking that you could get out. But front end would come up on the tractor pretty easy. And I know it was a lever clutch, and it would have been pretty easy to, if you had to lock the clutch all the way, why, it would have been pretty hard to keep it from going on over, I'm sure. But we got out anyway, I guess, being careful not to lock the clutch. So.
Well, yeah, but there was that one time Irvin had left the field and gone in, and you had to reach up and undo something so you could get out. Do you remember that?
I'm not sure what you're talking about.
Which time?
but I know. I was baling straw with the tractor, with the little tractor on the baler, and with that, it was cold late in the fall, quite late, but we hadn't had snow yet. And Irvin had left with a load of bales. He was living up north on the place up there. And I was going to bale a few more straw bales before I quit so that I could have something to do in the morning right away. And as I was doing it, my foot, well, a pocket gopher had built a nest in the windrow because that straw had been laying there quite long. And when I hit one of those piles where the pocket gopher had been working on, the slip clutch would go on the baler, and I had to back up a little bit to really get it going again. And I was doing this, and in order to reach the clutch pedal, I had been walking behind, just standing on the ground, because that baler didn't take that fast straws anyway. I stepped up on the drawbar to use the clutch and put it in reverse, and then I just got it in reverse, and because the ground had frozen, so that and it was quite moist, so that was on my rubber, and that made it so I slipped off the drawbar and nothing was holding me, and I was pushed on back, and the tractor come back at me too, and it was, the wheels were digging, and yeah, I got back there. There was a toolbox on top of the baler, and I reached up and got a grease gun, and with that, I could reach the button on the tractor and stopped it. So I felt pretty good. I got that much done, but I still wasn't out. So I had to figure out a way to get the tractor a little bit ahead so I could unpull the drop pin. And I managed to do that by taking vice grip and putting on the power takeoff and put the power takeoff in gear, and I managed to turn it enough so that I could loosen the drawbar and pull the pin. And that was a great relief because that got me out.
Yeah. How old were you, Kenny?
Oh, I don't know. I was probably 30 years old. I don't know.
Yeah.
Naomi, you got another question for Kenny?
Well, you know, I can remember back when I was a kid, but before I was born, your Christmas and Easters, what did you do as a family?
Well, the only time I remember is the family going into Christmas Eve services, and that was it. And I wasn't very old because it was in 1930 because it was Ingebrigtsen's was a new pastor there, and we went with horse and sleigh at that time. But I don't remember going home. Like I say, I suppose maybe I was sleeping.
So when gifts now are just kind of a thing that are sometimes even overdone. What kind of gifts did you give one another? Did you give gifts?
Oh, very little, I think. We didn't have too much. They didn't have too much to buy presents for us.
Do you remember if your mother and father gave you presents at Christmas?
Oh, I don't remember too much of it.
Okay.
So it was more just being together and family than the presents weren't the big thing.
Yeah. I do remember one birthday. I don't know exactly how old I was at that time, but I do remember my one birthday that Helen and her mother came over for my birthday. The rest of the crew were out putting up hay at that time, in August, so they couldn't come. So it was just Helen and her mother. But they had gotten me a shirt that was a really dressy shirt, I think, because it was kind of special material. But anyway, I always remember that shirt and that birthday. I know they took a picture of me by the house and put it at the. I used to have that picture around someplace, but I don't know where that is. But
that would have been Helen and Grandma Bessie. Huh?
Come over for my birthday.
Good question, Naomi. Keep going. You got any more?
Well, I know you played basketball in high school. What kinds of extracurricular kind of things did you do? And when you had time as a kid on the farm, what kind of things did you play with one another?
Oh, well, we played with bat and ball a little bit. The three of us worked out pretty good because one could pitch and one could catch and the other one could be a batter. So did some of that.
I know my mom used to talk about playing football once in a while with you boys, because that's all she had to play with pretty much was you and Irvin.
Well, I don't think it was much of a foot.
No, it wasn't. What did you use? What did you use for a football?
Oh, that was probably the same as we used. Because we didn't have much of a ball for shooting baskets. We had nailed a pail that had no bottom left in it onto the barn wall, and that used to be the basket. And then we took burlap and doubled up enough and used some line on the outside of it, and that was our ball for shooting baskets. Yeah. We did
question of Kenneth.
That before I got up there. Yeah.
I got a question, Paul.
Go ahead.
I'm using Frederica's phone because I can't unmute my own. But anyway, I wanted to ask Kenneth about if he remembers any kind of disputes that occurred between the various farm families. I'm thinking that nowadays, you know, you have two people that are interested in the same quarter of land, and they might be disappointed if the one is able to buy it and the other one couldn't. Do you remember any kind of disputes between families, between the Beavers or the Gilges or the Tastads over land?
I don't remember, and I don't remember hearing any really that kind of a.
Okay. Follow up, Chuck.
One other thing that I do remember, and I know I was out walking in the pasture, I think, at the time when Oscar Bakken's crash occurred out along the North Road when he got hit by those people that were Oscar Bakken and this Deshano, I think it was, that were in a race. So anyway, the one that got the roulette first was going to have to buy a keg of beer or something like that. So anyway, Oscar was in a truck and Deshano, Oscar was in a coupe, a small car. Deshano was in a truck, and Deshano figured that he could jump ahead of Oscar, and so he would be in the center of the road, and Oscar wouldn't be able to get by. So that's the way they started down the road in the race. But there was another party coming from the south up the hill by Ingles there, and he didn't. When he saw this other party, Oscar Buchan had to move over, and when Shano had to move over the truck to give him room. And then Oscar didn't realize that he had moved over because there was a car coming, and that's when they hit. But yeah, that I was out in the field at the time I heard that, I'm sure. But
who got injured?
Pardon?
Did they have any injuries? When he got hit, did somebody get hurt?
Oh yeah, Oscar was killed.
Oh, Oscar was killed.
Yes. Stanley Gilsey told me that the steering post and wheel was embedded in his chest.
Oh, be darned.
After the crash.
Okay. Further questions? Frederica, you have a question?
No, it's been very interesting. Thank you, Kenneth.
Oh,
let me say, I think, Kenneth, any one of us here today can imagine being 97 years old and having the kind of memory you have, when some of us at our age already are having a heck of a time remembering anything. And this is to tell this, you have been blessed with a terrific head on your shoulders. We're just so happy that you would spend this hour with us this afternoon. And we look forward to seeing you again. Wish you all the best. Just been a terrific afternoon of visiting. And special thanks to Joe and Steve Gilgy, who drove down from Rolette to make this possible. So Steve and Joe, thank you so much. And I think we're about ready to say goodbye, are we? Okay. Thank you, Ken. Thank you, Frederica, Naomi.
Love you, Uncle Kenny.
Okay. Kenneth.
Thank you.
Okay. Goodbye. We'll see you.